And then some of the upperclassmen, they took the jug of water, and instead of dumping it on the head coach, they dumped it on me. And I'll be honest, I took this as just like the biggest compliment in the world, right? Because sure, I didn't have the title of the head coach, but to me, that symbolized that I was doing something right for the kids. There was something that I was doing that made sense to them, something that clicked, and they felt that I was deserving of that massive celebration that kind of every coach looks for. But it was just the coolest experience. This international tournament, championship game under the lights. Winning a championship is always amazing, and just having this respect for my players. That's really what it was all about.
We are international on the Talking Shop podcast, where I'm here to share stories, lessons, and experiences in sports performance and professional development. I'm your host, Matt Tometz, and today I'm joined by Zack Wade, all the way out in Thailand. How are you doing today?
Hey, Matt, I'm doing great. I'm just feeling good. It's Wednesday morning here, and I'm just really, excited and honored to be here and excited to talk with you again, just catching up with a buddy.
Fantastic. Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, making it happen. So Zack is the head varsity baseball coach at the International School of Bangkok. He's also the baseball and softball coordinator there for all of the after-school programs. He's an online sports performance and personal training coach. And you've worked with the Thailand national team. You've played in some pretty big tournaments out there. Anything else I'm missing?
I think that basically sums up what I'm doing right about now. Just really involved in the baseball and softball scene out here. And then, just helping, lifelong athletes, regain some confidence through developing some better habits around their physical and mental health. I got to say, I just really love helping athletes reach their potential, whether it's lifelong athletes, people who are after their technical playing days, or the people who have a promising career ahead of them. I really hope that they can, reach their potential. That's really what I'm all about.
And I've been following along Zack's journey kind of from a distance. And Zack fits the mold of my target guest, my target audience of a young coach. I know a lot of people in college, they study abroad, do all this stuff, but Zack is doing the thing. And I think you're staying in Thailand extended a little bit longer than you planned. How long have you been there exactly?
Oh, wow. In September will be 4 years. So, literally, as long as I spent in Greencastle, Indiana, is how long I will have spending my time in Thailand.
Fantastic. So last thing on kind of the intro is how we know each other. So Zack and I went to high school together, and we were on the same varsity baseball team. And me as a junior, Zack, junior pitcher, Zack as the starting catcher. We always had kind of a relationship on this. Like, I always kind of looked up to you as being catcher, older, and all this stuff. And I feel like part of the reason that we clicked and what we chatted for 35 minutes before hitting record was just like, we were just on the same page. Like, all right, so here's just one example. I played baseball in college at Truman State. Zack played at DePaul. And whenever we were both in town during break, I had to get my work in. Zack was always down to get better. So we would just text, meet up. I used to work at a baseball facility. So I had a key. I'd throw my bullpen. Zack would work on his catching. I'd flip him soft toss. And here's just one example of the intentionality behind Zack that I'm curious if you remember the story. So I was flipping you soft toss after I threw my pen. And you would like take these like random breaks. I'm like, what? Like, sure, like he's doing his thing. And I like asked about it. And he's like, as soon as I start getting into a rhythm, I stop. Because in a game, you're going to have one at bat. You got to, 3 innings goes by. What's that, 40, 45 minutes, whatever, So I'm trying to make it as realistic as possible. I was like, whoa, like this guy's just like built different, So we always got along just because like we just wanted and clicked and vibed. And just following along in Thailand. And you actually reached out about some of my YouTube videos and how you can start doing some of my stuff with your athletes. So we're definitely on the same page. And I've appreciated everything you've done for me. And I'm excited that we can connect and chat and share with the world. So just kidding. There's 2 questions that I did not send you.
Oh, yeah.
That I did not send you before.
Oh,
so,
on the spot.
On the spot questions. Yes. So were you concerned about leaving your life behind in the States when you decided to stay in Thailand?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. So to be honest, when I came to Thailand, it was supposed to be a 6-month quick trip. I was going to have, a little bit of a journey, before I was eventually going to go back and live out the life I expected to have in the States. So I wasn't very nervous at that time. And then the opportunities in Thailand just continued to unfold in a way that was just really pleasurable to me. So, I came here to teach English. And, when I first arrived in Thailand, I landed in Bangkok and I was like, oh, this place is gross. I don't like it. Get me out of the city as soon as possible. And then we did our teacher training in like a beach island town, something like that. And I really started to like that. Um, and then when I actually ended up being a teacher, I was out in a super rural area. Like I'm talking like as soon as you get off the main highway, there's nothing but rice paddies and cow pastures for as far as the eye can see. I mean, I was living off of a few hundred bucks a month, and I had never felt like so happy and so much joy from the people that I was around because they were so happy with the life that they had, and it was intoxicating, man. It was something that I couldn't get enough of. So 6 months turned into 1 year, and then after a year, I was like, I need a little bit more action in my life, and I ended up moving back to Bangkok. And kind of to add a little bit more to this, I never felt like I was leaving a life behind in America per se. Up until recently, there was an opportunity for me to actually go back to the States and coach at the college baseball level and actually do some strength conditioning for a university. But almost immediately, I just knew that it was the right job offer, but at the wrong time. Like I'm still getting so much out of my experience here that I need to stay here and see some of these things through.
Fantastic, fantastic. Just because there's so many people that, like I said, have spent time in other countries, but even if it's just like a month, 2 months over the summer, a whole semester, et cetera, and like you're doing it. So last question is, whenever you decide to come back, are you concerned about not having that traditional American experience, or with the cost of living being so low, having not accumulated as much, we'll just call it like wealth, as opposed to if you had a more traditional job in the States? So are you concerned about, and very, candidly, and only share as much as you choose to share, but whenever, are you concerned that spending all that time out here is going to almost set you back as opposed to jump you forward when you come back?
So that's a great question. And when I was deciding about coming home or not, which literally would have been like this month or next month, I'm not that concerned about it because what I'm doing here is I'm following my passions. I'm doing strength conditioning, helping athletes reach their potential, and I'm still coaching baseball. And we talked about this in our conversation beforehand. It's not exactly the same game. It's a much watered down version of baseball out here, but they still play with so much love and passion and whatnot. So I hope that if I decide to go back to the States, which is kind of an if at this point, I hope that my abilities as a coach and the experience I have coaching athletes, that'll override, my experience in the States specifically. And then asking about the financial part of it, this is kind of another reason why I started my own online personal training and sports performance business, because only coaching out here was enough to live a life and have abundance, especially compared to, the lifestyle that's around me. But then I wanted to make sure I had a little bit of a nest egg and something that I could start to build for myself. And that was, maybe the third or fourth reason on the list for why I started my own online training business. I never thought I would have my own business. I went to a liberal arts university and I studied communication and philosophy. No business experience there. And you know what? Like I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, grew up around, extraordinary amounts of money and wealth. And I don't know if that was necessarily the recipe to happiness. They call Thailand the land of smiles and some of the happiest people in the world. And I don't know if that is something I can ever truly forget. So I'm not too concerned about it. I think that, as long as I continue working really hard, making myself a better coach and continuing to serve other people, then, I'll have enough money to support myself, my friends, my family, and the people that I really care about. That was a good question. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, fantastic. And thank you for the honest answer, kind of putting you on the spot. But I just remember when we connected first about the YouTube videos, and then it just turned into catching up about like just like the area that we're from is very affluent, and just a completely different world and almost like a culture shock. And you're like, I had so much stuff back, in the North Shore. It's just like, why does anyone need like all that stuff? And it's just so interesting. Like it's one thing to like understand conceptually, like Thailand being the land of smiles, but like to go live it and see it yourself is just a completely different thing. And it was also interesting, as you mentioned before, that like you had the whole traditional route, undergrad, go, teach English, just with some of your college buddies, and then apply to grad school, et cetera, et cetera. And how, look at where it's led you to now. So very cool. Thank you for your candidness, because it's not candidacy, but I feel like candidacy would be a better word. Anyways, so the first story, we will hop back in the States, back in time. So the first fundamental story that kind of set you on this path that without X, you'd be in a totally different spot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really enjoy sharing this story because it was the biggest growth that ever happened to me. So during my sophomore year of college, I got suspended from the college baseball team for a full year. And, it was not a one-time issue. I had gotten in trouble 1 time short suspension, 2 times short suspension, 3 times medium suspension, and I could not get out of my own way. Long story short, I got in trouble 2 more times, and to the point where my coach was like, I have no choice but to suspend you for a year. You're lucky that it's only going to be for a year, because you've made consistent bad decisions. And I can admit that, because I had some skills behind the plate, I had some playing time as a freshman. My coach didn't want to do it, but I forced his hand because I was just selfish. I thought the college experience was made for me. I thought I was giving to the baseball team, and baseball owed me something. All right. And it came to the point where I was just acting so selfishly and with my own agenda that I couldn't think about my team instead of myself. So I ended up being suspended from the baseball team for a year, and my world came crumbling down. I thought I was going to drop out of college. I was never going to play baseball again. I did not see the light at the end of the tunnel. And actually, that was the exact phrase that got me through it from one of my aunts. She was like, "Hey, Zach, I know this is super tough, but if you want to stay on this course, there's a light at the end of the tunnel." And that year was the year without baseball was the best thing that ever happened to me. Like, first of all, is it taught me this major lesson about prioritizing your life. What do you actually want in your life? And then if you want it, you need to absolutely go and get it. Nothing's going to be handed to you. You don't deserve anything just for the sake of showing up. All right. So this really made me, hunker down and focus on my academics, my fitness, and my baseball skills, because there was nothing I wanted more than to show up the next year and play baseball again. And on top of it, I didn't even have a guaranteed spot the next year. I had to try out. I was just like everyone else, trying out again. Right. So it really made me reprioritize my life. That was awesome in terms of an athletic perspective. But outside of that, it was also the best semester of college I'd ever had, because for the first time I had what felt like endless free time. Right. I've been an athlete my entire life. Go to practice, go to the gym, get extra work, go home, repeat. That was kind of just how life was. But for the first time, 3:30 rolled by and no plans whatsoever. And, I'm incredibly grateful for my academic advisor, Jeffrey Klinger, RIP, just passed away recently, actually. But he drove me to become more of a better person. He said, get involved in as many things as you can. So I, got involved with the environmental science club, took a leadership position in there. I had a radio show with a buddy. I started going to all the philanthropy events that were held all over campus, because we had a huge Greek life at school. And then actually the best thing that I got involved in was joining the debate team, right? So I had this incredible competitive edge, and I couldn't take it out athletically anymore, but I could start battling with the mind, right? And this is all because my academic advisor, he believed in me. I mean, he more or less forced me to go to my first debate tournament, went into my first debate, won my first round, and absolutely hooked. And it actually turned in debate is something I continue to do for the next 3 years as well. And, because of some amazing partners and teammates that I had, we went on to regionals, and one year we even made it to the national tournament, right? We went to DC, and we had some crazy debates with some of the smartest people I've ever been in the same room with. So yeah, that, I think I talked about this a little bit before, but that was my rock bottom. For me, losing baseball was losing everything. But honestly, they say that, people have the biggest bounce backs once they hit their rock bottom, because they have the firmest place to jump off of. So if this video ever makes it to the college baseball coach I had at that time, Coach Martin, I'm so incredibly grateful for the way that he handled my situation. He showed me that there was a path to making things better. He never gave up on me. And I mean, he's someone that I still talk to, you know, a few times a year, and I'm just grateful for him. He gave me an opportunity, and he didn't, he gave me an opportunity to grow. He didn't make me do it. Right. And again, I mean, when you asked me this question, or you sent me this question, immediately, no doubt, the best thing that ever happened to me. So I love to share this story. You know, sometimes I worry because it shows a negative light about some of my past, but that's me and that's my journey. And I'm infinitely better as a person because of what happened, because of the mistakes that I made.
Fantastic. And so this was then your sophomore year?
Yeah. So this was after fall ball. So I made it through the fall sophomore year, had a great fall, still lining up to be, you know, splitting time with a senior, or, you know, going to be a starting catcher that year, especially after having, you know, a good amount of time freshman year. And then just, oh, Matthew, I can knock it out of my own way. Let's just put it like that.
Fantastic. And it's funny you mentioned that about free time, because I remember there was like one just fall, like Thursday, we got rained out. And then I like went to the library at like 3:30, you know, and I like got my homework done. And I was like, what do I do now? You know, like how do like NARPs, which I am now, I guess. Like, how do NARPs do this like every day, you know? So it's just funny that you mentioned that. But so last kind of follow-up question on this topic. So I work with high school athletes, and I'm sure a lot of my audience does as well. And it's a super fundamental age sport wise, you know, whether they make the team. Like myself, like I was concerned about not making the team junior year, actually, because I was a B player my whole life. I was like I didn't know if I was going to make the sophomore team as one team and then varsity, et cetera, et cetera. I made it, you know, I pitched well senior year, and then I played in college. So it's so fundamental. So my question is, how was it like getting yourself to go do baseball stuff that year? The cage by yourself, set up the pitching machine and work on your framing when you know that you weren't doing it, and then consequently, or that you like weren't on the team. And consequently, what advice would you give to a coach if one of their athletes just got cut?
Awesome. So yeah, it was lonely and it was humbling. And every time, you know, there was almost like a little bit of shame for me too every time I went there, because I just had to relive, like, wow, I'm doing this by myself. But I think the key aspect to it was there was a belief, a belief deep inside of me that if I put in this work, if I continue to show up day after day after day, and I would get a little bit better, then it would all amount to something. You know, there's a purpose for why I'm doing it. And honestly, it made me realize that everybody's working hard, right? And all the guys who were on the team had such a big advantage over me because they had that practice time. And then I know the guys that would have extra work as well. So not only did I have to make up for the practice time, I had to make up for their extra work, and I had to do even more than they were doing. And I had to do this all by myself. So basically what I would say, and this is so hard to understand at a young age, and this went way over my head as a young athlete, is you have to believe that if you keep chipping away day after day, that in a year, in 2 years, you'll be able to make great strides. And actually, someone who I really listen to a ton is Tim Ferriss. And he has this amazing quote where he says, "We overestimate what we can do in a day, and we underestimate what we can do in a year." Right? So the accumulation of small steps, it adds up, man. And, you know, compound interest, keep moving forward. Right? And if you believe in it, and if it's worth it to you, right, you have to make sacrifices. And if it's worth it to you, keep going for it, and you really can do it.
I remember when this kind of all went down my freshman year, your sophomore year, and I'm sure that this is an extremely valuable story. But we're gonna move on. I'm gonna make myself move on. So thank you for sharing that. You know, as I'm sure a lot of the listeners played sports at a high level, and you know they work with high level athletes. So very relatable nonetheless. But next, what is the coolest story you have thus far? So if I asked you just to say just one, some random stranger said, "Oh, you're a coach. Tell me about it." What would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. So I basically stumbled upon International School Bangkok ISB at like the perfect timing. They had just actually hired an assistant coach the day before, and then I applied. They hired a coach within their school, like a teacher. And then they had a baseball coach come in, and they're like, okay, for the first time ever, we're going to have another coach come in. And I'm just blown away by this opportunity. It's so cool. The facilities at school are next level, unbelievable. And then like Oh my goodness, I get to coach baseball. Like this is a dream while I'm still living abroad and in this seemingly still fantasy world that I live in here. So we have a great season, and I love coaching these guys. And actually, one of our coaches that we had growing up, Coach Dan Mayer, he always led by example. He led from the front. The hardest working person in every single practice, whether it was 14U baseball, freshman A team, or freshman
Tryouts.
football, was Coach Dan Mayer, right?
Yeah.
No doubt about it. So that was something that I tried to explain to my athletes, but you can only explain by demonstrating. So I gave my absolutely everything I had day in and day out with these kids, and they responded really well to it. We played our season. We have some international exchanges, teams flying in from Hong Kong and Japan and doing our exchanges, which are just normal to these kids, which is wild. Then we went to one tournament in Singapore, and then we came back for it's called our IASIS championship. It's kind of like our conference tournament, end of season tournament. And it's super cool because it's a group of 5 schools, Taipei, Kuala Lumpur, Manila, Jakarta, and Bangkok. And we just come together for just compete in all sports, but of course this one's about baseball. So we're competing in this baseball tournament, and it was just one of those magic weekends, man. Everything seemed to go our way. Our best players played at their best. They led with their skill and their leadership skills. And then even more than that, some of our backup bench players made all the plays. Our backup second baseman making diving plays, turning our only double play of the year. A pitcher who hadn't pitched the entire year, he started off throwing overhand, but just decided to throw sidearm, throws 3.5 innings of shutdown baseball in a game when no one expected from him. We were just trying to mess with the other team more or less. And everything was just working for us this weekend. And then it all came down to the final night. I think it was a Sunday night. We get the championship game at our home field under the lights. We have our ace on the mound. We're playing the team from Manila. They have these 2 brothers, or the pitcher and catcher. They're killing it. It's just an amazing, amazing game. And I couldn't tell you the X's and O's and how the game ended, but I can tell you that we won that game, and it was an absolutely incredible experience. I mean, from a coaching perspective, just watching the boys just sprint to the mound and have that dog pile and the celebration, and it was so clear, this idea of we did it, right? No one was selfish, and it was just such an awesome experience, and the boys were just so happy. After the dog pile, the boys shook hands, really respectful. And then what they do in baseball in Asia and Southeast Asia is they all give like a thank you and a bow to the crowd. And it was incredible. And then after that, I'm talking to the coaches, we're shaking hands. And then some of the upperclassmen, they took the jug of water, and instead of dumping it on the head coach, they dumped it on me. And I'll be honest, I took this as just like the biggest compliment in the world, right? Because sure, I didn't have the title of the head coach, but to me, that symbolized that I was doing something right for the kids. There was something that I was doing that made sense to them, something that clicked, and they felt that I was deserving of that massive celebration that kind of every coach looks for. And honestly, I still talk to 2 of these players. They've graduated, so it's okay. I still talk to them, and I follow their careers and their lives that they're doing now. But it was just the coolest experience. This international tournament, championship game under the lights. Winning a championship is always amazing, and just having this respect from my players. That's really what it was all about. And I cherish that memory. And actually, the coffee mug I have here today, you can see IASIS champions 2019. This is from the lovely parents that season who were just so proud of our accomplishments as a squad.
Impact is impact. It's not a location. It's not a job title, and that's been another theme, similar to how like the X's and O's is what us coaches do. But when it's all said and done, like you didn't know who scored what play or what the even score was, but it was that you won. It was the celebration. It was the dog pile, and it's just so interesting to on my podcast, having spoken with private people, college people, professional people, as well as just different roles within that, is like there's so many different ways that these stories can accumulate, all with a common theme. But I can just imagine or I can't because I've never had water kind of poured on me, but when like just how you phrase it of like they chose specifically not someone else who you would assume gets that. So that was during your first year with them.
Yes, so that was my first year, and I was the assistant coach of the team that year. Yeah, one of the assistant coaches.
So I mean, correlation isn't causation, but you start with the team and they win the conference championship. So it just might be.
No, it's a
Uh,
great group of kids. They did it all. I just helped support them every way I could.
so follow up question, kind of on this topic, working with an international team or just in a different country coaching, what was their ability to speak English / your ability to communicate with them, and what was the biggest barrier you had in regards to you just literally doing your job as a coach?
Okay, so this is going to have to take a couple directions here. So first, when I'm working at the international school, I had players from Japan, Thailand, America, Canada, but at the international school, there's a complete understanding of English, even if it's not their main language. So there's no language barrier there, and I'll go into a second story in a second there. But what the barrier is it's the level of baseball is just not the same. We're not teaching the intricacies of the game. Rather, we're teaching like, here's how the game is played correctly. Here's the purpose of throwing a fastball in then out, changing the eye level, right? You're not really saying, we're past the point of like point step throw, or we're past that, but we're not at the point of being like how do you back up a 2-2 curveball if he was early on it. We're not quite into there. It's more of kind of just like let's throw strikes to get ahead. Let's move base runners around the bases, and scoring runs wins games, right? And it's high school as well. So it's like I would say it's kind of like a mid to low level high school team in America, to be frank. But like the competition's still there. It's still the game of baseball, and it's still a recognizable version of the game. But as someone who played at a college level, and I was lucky enough to play a season in the prospect league, like it wasn't that baseball, let me tell you. But something you alluded to as well is I had a crazy opportunity to work with the Thai national baseball team as they were getting ready for the Southeast Asian Games, which I believe was in 2020. I only worked with them for like a 2 to 3 week stint, but there's a language barrier. Especially with a lot of Thai guys, they might not speak as much English as opposed to Thai girls. But communicating with them, it was a lot about the nonverbal, the body language. And then I learned specific Thai for baseball and sports performance: the throw, run, not fastball, fastball, like things like that, just to make sure that we were on the same page. And then I was lucky enough, there was a Thai American kid who could translate. When it was a really important topic, I would basically just speak to him and he would speak to them. But if I wasn't working in the group he was in, I had to get my message across through my actions, check for understanding. They would do it, and then we would review it in the best way that we could. And it was absolutely a barrier, a hurdle, not a barrier. But if you're willing to work through it, then there's no problem, right? These young men wanted to get better at baseball. They were willing to listen, so it made me, eager to coach them and to work through the challenges to make sure we're on the same page.
Fantastic. And whether it's a coach in the States that just starts working with a diverse group of athletes, or whether they get an opportunity kind of like yourself, just interesting to hear. Like I said, you're doing it. So very cool nonetheless. And there's lessons within those challenges that can make, me as an American coach like better as well. So definitely something that I wanted to put out there. But so last big story is the story you're most proud of, or looking back, like the most kind of full circle moment. What would it be?
All right, so I can be long-winded sometimes, so I'll give you guys the medium length version of this. So here's a full circle story for you guys. So I ended up in Thailand totally by chance. When I was on the plane over here, I didn't even know where I was flying. I couldn't pick out Thailand on a map until I was on the plane and it had the little flyover. I was like, oh, there I am, there I'm going. All right, so when I was doing my teacher training, I went to the beach with some of the guys I came here with, who were also guys from my college baseball team. And, we're brilliantly smart. We brought our baseball gloves, but we didn't bring a baseball. And it just so happened that the beach we were at, there were 3 other people there. And one of the guys there was a South African kid. And he's like, oh, you guys looking to throw around a baseball? We're like, yeah, but we're so dumb. We forgot to bring it. He's like, oh, give me 2 minutes. And he literally hopped out of his chair and ran to his apartment and came back with a plastic rubber ball in his glove. And we just played long toss on the beach for hours. I mean, my arm hurt for weeks after that, sunburned for days, but it was just, kids playing ball. And, this kid, we exchanged contacts, but nothing much. Didn't talk to the kid for a year. 1 year later, I think I was either on the way to the airport or at the airport. He shoots me a message, "Hey, there's a slow pitch softball tournament coming up. My team could really use you. Do you want to play?" And I'm like, "Slow pitch softball, buddy? I don't know about that, but I can't make it. I'm going to go home. But hey, let me know if there's another opportunity." And it was kind of more of a pleasantry than imagining that I would actually ever play, because I had no idea about slow pitch softball. How does it go? I come back to Thailand. I move to Bangkok, where the slow pitch league is hosted. And a week after that, he's like, "Hey, the league's still going. We're looking for players. Do you want to play?" You know what? Sure. I need ball in my life. I need to do something. I need to play some more. Through that softball league, I started meeting some people. I told them about my experience playing and coaching. And it's like, "Hey, my son goes to International School Bangkok. They have a baseball team and they're looking for another coach. Would you be interested?" Sure, absolutely. I'll go for it, right? Why not? So I decided to do this baseball coaching thing. And then as soon as that became an opportunity, I was like, I am done teaching English. I can't do this anymore. I don't like teaching English whatsoever. Being in a super rural area where there's no English understanding whatsoever, it was more of like a summer camp than a school, but that's a story for another time. But coming to Bangkok, and I was working for a massive international company, I just felt like a clog in the wheel, right? And I was way too far away from home to be doing that. So while I was coaching baseball in this assistant role, scraping money by, living a very humble lifestyle, but still really happy, I was like, what do I want to do? I want to help athletes and help baseball players. And I was like, what was the biggest thing that was missing from my experiences as a baseball player? And it was my athleticism, my strength and conditioning, right? So I'm looking into these different certifications, and I find the certified strength conditioning specialist, the CSCS, the gold standard for coaches who want to work in athletic development. And I was like, yeah, I want to go for it. And when I told some people about it, they're like, "You have no background, no exercise phys, no kines, no exercise science. Like, you don't know anything, buddy." And then the pass rate for this test is between 50 to 60%. Of people who pass on the first time, and it is a difficult exam. So I basically hunkered down for 10 months, and I studied this massive thick textbook. It's got the science, the application, just so much information in there. But I just knew it's something that I really wanted to do. And then, about 8 or 9 months in, I picked a test day. I was like, oh my goodness, now it's real. Like, I have to know this stuff. I have to internalize. This has to become part of my knowledge base of who I am. And, the night before I sat for the exam, I took the front page of my notebook where I took all the notes, and it was supposed to be a cover page the whole time, but it just stayed blank for the 10 months I was studying. And I ended up writing a note to myself for the next morning to read. And it was basically like regardless of what happens at the end of this test, congratulations for all that hard work that you put in there. You've worked so hard, this information, and now this is the time that you get to show off everything that you learned. Went in there, took the test, stressful, 3, 4, 5 hours, whatever it was. And I didn't realize, like, submit, they see it submitted, print right there. You figure out if you pass this test or not. So they give me the test back, and I'm just staying in the chair. I'm not going up to the front. I'm not looking at it. I'm like, I need a second. After 3, 5 minutes, whatever, I'm like, all right, fine, I'll look. Section 1, pass. Yes. Oh my God. Section 2, do I want to do it? Turn the paper over. Woo, I passed that one too. And it was just like, oh my goodness, wow, I did it. Now I'm a baseball coach, and I have what I need to be a strength conditioning coach to help athletes in the way that I think that they really need it, right? And in that strength conditioning area of their life. Now we're about 3/4 through the circle here. And now I think about where I am today. And now I have this incredible opportunity. And you said it in my intro, but I'm the head varsity baseball coach at International School Bangkok. I'm the baseball and softball coordinator for the youth rec league, the travel teams, and all the after school activities around baseball and softball. And then I have an online business where I just get to help people get more out of themselves, whether it's athletes trying to reach the next level, or it's people who just want to regain confidence in themselves and have some routines and feel like an athlete again. And the reason it's so full circle, Matt, is because I followed my passions. I didn't follow a paycheck. I didn't follow the advice my parents gave me. Trust me, I didn't follow that, but I just followed my passions. And I had this belief that if I followed my passions of baseball, fitness, and helping other people, I would end up where I need to be today. And actually, when you ask me today, hey, Zach, how you doing, in a casual way, I'm doing great. I feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be right now. And if anyone could take anything from this, it's just follow your passions, man. If it's a thing that excites you to get out of bed every day, it's worth pursuing. You might start at the bottom, you might start with nothing, or you might even have to start at the education level to figure out what the heck you're going to do with it at the end. It's worth starting, because your passions will lead you in the way that you need to. They'll lead you to where you need to be.
And that's a testament to just kind of, who you are as a person, and part of the reason why we clicked. And that test is not easy. I was fortunate enough, like I have an exercise science degree. I'm a good test taker, and I did pretty well, but I have some colleagues with the same background as myself that did not pass it. So you as a comm major in a different country trying to figure this stuff out, like, man, hats off to you, literally and figuratively, for us baseball players. But I like how you finish that up about just like it, like you just feel like you're in the right spot. And it was interesting because, when you said that you turned down a collegiate baseball coach / strength coach role, like myself, like I don't want to coach baseball. I enjoy it, but I've enjoyed doing other sports. But even myself, I was like really, like how could he have done that? And I'm sure many of the audience, like they'd be like, this guy did what? Just because, college is so touted and all this kind of stuff. And it's just like, without even having spoken, you feeling that you really are where you need to be. That story about turning that down, which I'm excited to hear once we stop recording. But
yeah, sure.
There's just so much to be said about just because it sounds good on paper or it looks good in an Instagram bio. And that's the battle that I'm fighting. Do I want to do college? Do I want to stay? Like at the end of the day, clout is clout. Like putting a university on your LinkedIn, on your resume means something, but to stay in, from the area we grew up in, to be staying in Thailand, to turn down like the traditional like performance coach dream, I guess, if that's what we want to call it, is just like, it's just good to hear. And I'll give the mic back to you after that.
Yeah, you know what? Like, there's just different experiences, man. There's just like a few things that have been highlighted that just have meant so much to me out here. The person who pushed me to apply for the assistant coaching job, he's like, one day you're going to be known as Mr. Baseball in Thailand. And then 2 years later, one of my Thai buddies, I was like, oh, it's Mr. Baseball. And it was just like a mind-blowing experience. It was just like everything is unfurled as it should. And I just have an ability to make an impact. And my baseball gave me so much. And being able to give baseball to a country where it's not huge yet is such an incredible opportunity. And then the other part of it is like being a business owner, something I never thought that I would do before. It pushes me day in and day out. It goes kind of against my instincts, right? I'm not a logistics guy. I'm more of an abstract thinking, let's talk about the future and all these great ideas kind of thing. But it forces me to learn these new skills. And you can ask my clients, I love our weekly check-ins. I love talking to them. I love hearing about how their life is going. And I love seeing the progress that they make over time. So yeah, DePaul, it was an amazing experience playing college baseball. I absolutely loved it. But the idea of going back right now, it just isn't the thing for me. There's still more work that I have to do here. And I still think I need to internalize some of the lessons that are starting to make sense before I am ready to go back to the States. If, a big if there, that's what I ultimately decide to do.
You did say if earlier, and I was like, oh man, I feel like that's definitely a pretty big two letters right there. Fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the three biggest stories. But here on TSP, like I said, the X's and O's are why we're here. It was baseball. It was my YouTube videos about coaching. But, that's the last thing that we talked about so far. But at the end of the day, we're all practitioners and we are all here to get better and do our jobs better. So if you had to but here's something abstract for you. If you had to give the listener one question that they can ask themselves on a daily basis, put on a sticky note for their mirror, whatever it may be, to help them get better. Oh, you're the sticky note king. I remember that from our first chat. I remember that. Yeah, there we go.
It's there. It's right next to my work text. This is the question that was already here before you asked this question.
Hit us.
All right. So the one question that I would give to aspiring athletes, strength conditioning coaches, or actually literally any person about anything, what advice would your future self tell your current self? All right. And the reason that this is so impactful is because I'll say 99% of the time, the answers are within us, man. Like if we're looking at the way we're living day to day, we know, is this what we're meant to be doing? Is this making me happier? Or is this moving me in the direction towards where I want to go? I want to take back that as making me happier, because I don't think happiness is necessarily the ultimate goal. I think that reaching your potential and serving others is really what your goal should be. But anyways, if your future self was to come back to you today and you reached it to where you want to be, what would they tell you about right now? Right? Because if we're really honest with ourselves, we have to say, like, are we working our hardest? Are we living our truest, most authentic selves? Are we living our lives? Or are we living this life that we think we're supposed to live for our parents, for our society, for our culture? And again, these answers they're really deep inside of us, and we know the truth. And sometimes it's hard to admit it. And there's ironically, one of the answers sometimes is, I'm not happy. I have no idea what to do. I need help. But that's a great answer in itself. You're just acknowledging I'm not where I need to be and I need to be somewhere else. Right. So saying the answers are within you means if things are going right or wrong. If things are going in the direction that you want them to be going in, or they aren't. So yeah, whenever you're doing anything, you just got to ask yourself, what would my future self tell my current self? And it should hopefully at least put you on the first step in the path to where you ultimately want to be.
I really like that answer because my mentor, Steve Bridenstine, who's been on episode 88 and 100, I have this weird ability to like remember episodes and who was on and what. But I helped him out with the interns at TC Boost because he's the director of coaching. So it's part of his responsibility. I enjoy coaching coaches. So it's just like help him out, help out the interns. And it was the last Zoom because we had some virtual interns because, COVID. But he asked them, it's like, what advice, because you guys, they're all seniors in college. If you could go back 4 years ago, what would that advice be? And then we all went around and shared. And he's like, your goal, when I ask you that in 4 more years, is to have a different answer, And speaking about how the answer is inside of you, what advice would you give yourself? Well, you know what it is because, it's like the advice that you're giving. So it's like, even if it's just like 6 months, your goal is to not say the same thing. So I think my answer to that was like, accumulate as much experience and do as many things as possible. So similar to your last or the semester at DePaul when you joined, all of those different things. It's just like accumulate. Like I call myself an expert, like mixer and matcher. I've done so many random things. Not a lot of them is stuck, but I've realized what I've liked, what I've not liked, things that I've brought along, et cetera, et cetera. So my goal in however many years is like to not say accumulate as many experiences as possible. Hopefully I've crushed that and there's new things that I've learned. So kind of just to build on your question. So it's interesting that you said that.
You know what, man, I appreciate it. I appreciate what you're telling me. And I love this idea that goals are ever shifting, right? Because hopefully you are moving towards them. And as you do, the experience starts to make more sense. And I think we talked about it this morning a little bit, but it's like your journey only makes sense through the rear view mirror, right? Something that seems like the worst experience or the best experience, it doesn't make sense at that time, but it's only when you look back and you what is the word? You think about, you reflect on everything that's happened. Yeah, hindsight. When you get the chance to reflect on things, that's when it really makes sense in your true story. And again, at that time, suspended from the baseball team, the worst pain I've ever been in as a person. Now it's the best experience that I call on so consistently. And when you ask me that question, no doubt in my mind what my answer is going to be.
Fantastic, fantastic. So wrapping this up, I want to say thank you very much for your time. And now the red carpet is yours to shamelessly plug whatever you got to plug. Where can we get more of Zack Wade?
Yeah, awesome. So being an online sports performance and personal trainer, basically I run everything through Facebook. You guys can check me out, Zack Wade, Z-A-C-K. It's not Zach, it's Zach. This is some like stuff I made up in kindergarten and it stuck with me today. And you can kind of check out what I'm all about. I'm not these like carbs are going to kill you. You must do my workout. I kind of enjoy like a personal one-on-one approach to fitness. And my goal is to give, the best information to you guys for free. And then my job as a coach is to help you apply it, right? I don't want to be your trainer for 5 years. I want to be your trainer for 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. You learn these tools and move on with yourself. So you can come check out what I'm all about on my Facebook page. And something I didn't think I was going to talk about today, but I actually sell a CrossFitter's workout programs. They're called Power Abs. Carrie Pierce, she's the third fittest woman in the world, the fittest American in the world. And whenever someone buys one of her training programs through my affiliate link, I get a tiny cut from it. And what I've decided to do is I'm going to donate all of the money that I get through those affiliate sales to a charity. And actually, I haven't made a hard commitment to this yet, but I think what I'm going to do is every single dollar that goes into there, I'm going to buy basically baseball starter kits that I can start giving to these government schools around Thailand. Kids love to play. They just need the equipment. They need the know-how. If I have a little bit of cash that can go a long way out here, and my purpose is to spread baseball around this country, that's really what the money is going to go to. And again, why these programs are so effective: 10 minutes a day, no equipment required, guaranteed results in 30 days if you stick to it. Nothing's guaranteed, right? So if you're not into it, I'm not making any money off of it. It's all going to support the cause of making baseball a bigger and better sport in Thailand. For that ultimate goal, you heard it here first, Matt. There will be an MLB academy in Thailand someday, right? Once that first player gets drafted from Thailand, I know that Major League Baseball won't miss out on the next one. So that's what I have to share. Those are my shameless plugs right now, and so grateful for this time. This has been an awesome conversation, man.
Fantastic. And baseball is why we're here, but it's so much more beyond that. But you heard it from Mr. Baseball himself. So I'll say thank you very much for your time, and just for your openness and your candidness and sharing all of these stories that I know that the listener will get a lot of value of and relate to as well. So thank you very much again, and I'm looking forward to our next chat.